Howdy, Pilgrim. Laha. It's die noon, and you know what that means, don't you? Means it's time for a gunfight at the OK Corral. 'Cause this tomb ain't big enough for the both of us. Which brings me to tonight's tale. It's about a gunslinger who's about to ride into his last roundup. I call this prairie poison Showdown.
Billy? You there, Billy?
I'm still here, Harley.
You can't let him catch us, Billy.
We lost that posse 3 days ago. They're probably still chasing dust devils up in the territories.
They're close. I see dust on the horizon.
It's just the wind, Harley, friend. Just the wind.
Oh, God. I hurt so bad. Billy?
Here lies Harley Barrel. Initials on the gun belt. Take him up, you don't believe me.
Miss McMurdo, we've been at this for weeks now. Boys are tired. Talk about heading back.
This grave's still fresh. It's not more than a few hours old. The rest of you want to quit? You go ahead. Me? I'm going after Quintain. Howdy.
Feed and board for the night. 2 horses.
Hey, mister. What happened to that other rider?
Ma'am?
William Quintain.
Billy Quintain.
I'm calling you out, Billy.
You the one been tracking me?
Thomas McMurdo. Tom.
Texas Ranger, I heard about you. Hey, Tommy. They say you're the best there is.
I gotta take you in, Billy.
Uh-huh. Well, Ranger man.
Tommy, make your move. Whiskey. Leave the bottle.
You look like a card playing man.
Deal him straight. You got fast hands.
So do you, friend. So do you.
What are you trying to pull?
Nothing, friend. Just try to prove a point.
Which is?
The hand is quicker than the eye. Which brings me to my next point. Oh, forgive me. Allow me to introduce myself. Cornelius Bosch, fresh out of Duluth. You ever been to Duluth, friend? Oh, no, I thought not. I'm here to tell you about a miracle of modern medicine. Dr. Silver's Wonder Tonic. Guaranteed to quicken the reflexes, sharpen the senses, and improve the vision. Even the fastest of us can use that extra edge, wouldn't you say, Mr. Quintain? Oh, did I forget to mention? Today, there's an extra discount. 10%.
Go peddle your potion elsewhere, little man. I'm as fast as they is.
My final offer. One time only. I will give you a bottle of Dr. Silver's Wonder Tonic. Absolutely free. And if you do not see a difference, I'll pay you $1.
I'll play along, little man. But you lose more than $1. I don't look kindly on being took for a fool.
Oh, fair enough.
It's like your magic juice ain't nothing but snake oil.
Are you all right?
Damn it, that ain't the spitting image of Doc Holliday.
The lawman.
The man. He was a low-life bounty hunter till he caught up with me and Yuma, and I put a hole right through that thin star of his.
You mean he's deceased? Are you sure?
Of course I am, because I'm the one who deceased him.
They're close. I hear hoofbeats.
It's just the wind, Harley, friend. Just the wind.
William Quintain, calling you out. Billy?
What was in that tonic?
You slipped me some of them mushroom peyote things, didn't you? Scrawny little son of a...
Billy. Frank?
It's Chase. Don't go, Chaban.
Instead. Frankie? Frank Little Bear?
It's been a long time, Billy.
But I killed...
Look around, Billy. Many familiar face here.
It's just the wind, Billy. Just the wind.
All come to pay their respects. All those you killed. The guest of honor here today, Mr. Quintain.
Who are you? You the devil himself? You come to snatch my soul?
Just Cornelius Bosch, fresh out of Duluth. Caught in the crossfire when you robbed that Wells Fargo office back in Haddington, Missouri. A stray bullet. Your stray bullet, I'm afraid.
You demons from the pit! You come to drag me off to hell! No! No!
Heaven or hell, Billy. Whatever you care to call it. It's a warm place. It's a quiet place.
We're all there, Billy. All of us that lived by the gun and died by it.
We're Brotherhood of the Gun.
You don't belong here. You belong with us.
No, you listen. I killed each and every one of you men in a fair fight, and you got no cause to come slithering out of your grave to complain to me. As far as you, old man, I am sorry.
Our time has passed. You don't belong here. None of us do. Like I said, I gotta take you in.
I shot you dead, Tom McMurdo.
True enough. But you don't recall what happened after that, do you?
I came in here.
Oh, you remember walking away from my body? Crossing the street? Coming up those saloon steps? Can you honestly say? It's all a blank, isn't it? You don't remember it all. You're just like us. Only you ain't got sense enough to admit it.
Accept it, Mr. Quintain. Accept it.
Accept it, Billy.
Accept it, Billy.
Go away! You're dead and I'm alive! I'm alive! Go away! Go away! Go away! Go away!
Okay, folks, step right on in now. There's still lots to be seen.
Come on, hurry!
Now, it may interest you folks to know that this saloon has got its very own ghost.
A ghost, Big Bart?
And not just any ordinary ghost either, little fella. Turn that thing off. But I'm talking about the ghost of Billy Quintain himself. Yes, sirree, the fastest gun in the West. But his luck ran out on him the day that old Tom McMurdo caught up with him. Tracker Tom, the Texas Ranger. Oh, and what a showdown it was, too, folks. Both men drew, and both men fired. But it was Tracker Tom that hit the dust, struck down by the outlaw's bullet. But we all know that Tom McMurdo didn't come to town alone that fateful day. His posse was hid out all over this town. And the moment that Tom bit the dust, that posse cut down Billy Quintain. Yes, sirree. Out of every window, every rooftop, out of every doorway they come, a-flinging lead at him. And they tell me, some folks do, that late at night, if you listen real close, you can hear the voice of that poor lost soul up there, a-whistling and a-crying through the rafters of this saloon, screaming like a banshee. Well, that's enough of that, folks. Let's mosey on down the trail. There's still lots more to be seen here. Step right over this way.
Don't leave me.
I'm here to tell you.
I was wrong.
Do you hear me? I was wrong. Doc? Tommy? Harley? Wherever you are, wherever you go, don't leave me here! Don't leave me here! Take me in, Ranger Man. Take me in, please. Take me in.
William Quintain, I'm calling you out. I gotta take you in, Billy.
Well then, Ranger Man. Tommy, make your move. Be seeing you, Tommy.
Come on, you sorry sons of bitches!
Come on now, the bus is 6 to leave.
Tom McMurdo, Texas Ranger.
Billy Quintain, outlaw.
I was fast, wasn't I?
Damn fast, Billy. Damn fast. You ready?
Let's ride.
Yeah.
Talk about a sick shooter. Who'd have thought being a cowboy could stir up so many bad feelings? Well, kiddies, I've got to go. There's a ghoul rush on, you know. I wonder, who was that masked man? Stella! Stella! Oh, hello, plague goers. I was just rehearsing with my little theater group. I just love the slimelight. For tonight's dreary drama, I thought we'd try an experimental piece about a retired drag racer who's afraid of getting to the finished line a little sooner than he wants. I call this nasty nugget King of the Road.
Are you gonna be by tonight?
Probably. You got a ride home?
No, but I will. Don't worry about it.
Hello down there. See, I was hoping you could help me out. I'm trying to track down this old boy supposed to live around here.
Who is that?
Well, now, I haven't actually met him yet. Been kind of hard to track down. Sure is a sweet car. This yours?
No, it's my daughter's. Mine's out in the front.
Putting some muscle into this, sweetheart. I like that. Well, I best be hitting the road. I appreciate your time.
You still didn't tell me who you're looking for.
Oh, well, he's a real smart guy. Real fast guy. So they say.
What's his name?
Iceman.
Nice.
Usual?
Yeah, thanks, sweetheart.
Be back in a minute.
Okay, baby.
I'll be a snake on Sunday. Pop in here for a shake, and who do I run into? The Iceman. How you doing?
You got some names and faces confused, cowboy. The name's Joe. Joe Garrett.
Now, you don't have to be modest with me, Iceman. I mean, you're a legend. I've been hearing stories about you for as long as I can remember. Never lost a race. 8 years straight. King of the road. Too bad it had to end the way it did.
I don't know who you are, but I don't like you.
Hey, I don't mean nothing by it. I'm sorry. But you know what would be so cool? If I could just get a chance to share some road with you, you know, a straight quarter mile.
You got the wrong guy.
Unit 14, see the man, maintenance 6th, code 3.
10-4.
Hi.
Hi.
You had to take off.
That happens all the time. Why don't you take it?
Got your dad's eyes.
So you come by tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll come.
from the house.
Guess I owe you one.
Guess you do. See you at midnight?
Mm-hmm. Where are you?
I'm in pursuit of 1969 Chevy IVB N536. Give me a make.
Roger, Unit 14. Suspect is one William H. Drake, lives in Tackford. Has a rap sheet as long as your arm. We got reckless driving, assault with a deadly weapon, and a manslaughter charge that didn't stick. Seems as though he's the hottest street racer they got down there. You need any backup, Garrett?
Negative. This one's mine.
Roger, Unit 14. You're at 10-7 at that location. Have a nice day off, Garrett.
Carrie?
Daddy.
Hi, Joe.
Daddy, what are you doing?
Stay away from him, Carrie.
No, what are you hitting him for?
Nothing happened, sir. I just brought her home. That's all.
It's all gonna begin.
Get out of my way, Carrie.
No!
Carrie, he's using you.
Come on, Joe. Catch it. Come on.
That's what got in you.
Go to your room.
It's all right, Carrie. I'll go.
Billy, what? I'm coming with you.
The hell you want? Move!
It's all right.
Billy!
Oh, come on, Joe. Come on. It's getting old. Keep your breath, sweet man. Come on. Do I have to tell you how bad it's gonna be when Middleton finds out one of its finest has been dodging a manslaughter charge for 27 years, Joe? Huh? A single parent, too, Joe. If you get 5 to 10, who's gonna take care of Carrie? Oh, don't look so down, Joe. You're tearing me up here. You should have known I was coming along sooner or later. So be a man about it. Just think of me as your karma, Joe. Karma? Okay. Just you and me on the starting line, Joe. That's all. Yeah, that's all.
Billy, wait. I'm coming with you.
Hop in, beautiful.
How you doing, Billy?
Glad you can make it, Joe.
You want to race, Billy? You name the place, I'll name the time.
All right. Airstrip outside of town.
Tomorrow night, midnight. Now, where's my daughter?
Who? Oh, your daughter? Well, Joe, I'll tell you something about your daughter. She was starting to get a real bad attitude. Women, huh? Well, it don't matter. Nothing if you change couldn't handle. Fits perfectly back to just like a little spare tire. Whoa! Now let's not lose our cool, Iceman. Wouldn't do any of us any good. Oh, Joe, I hate to treat you like this. What do you think? I'm just gonna hand her over to you and expect you to show up? Can't see it.
What are you saying, Billy?
I'm saying, she's a stake, see? You win, you get her back.
And if I lose?
Well, then I'll have to kill her, won't I? And Joe, I wouldn't go to any of your cop buddies, you know? Because I'm not only smart, I'm crazy.
Hey, old buddy.
Holy Moses, I don't believe it. Joe, is it really you?
It's me, man.
Eight balls in hell, I knew you'd come back, I knew it. One day I said, one day he's gonna come riding out of oblivion just like Shane, and oh man, that road is gonna burn.
Mo, I gotta know. Is she still there?
I polished her up every 6 months like clockwork, thinking you might come back.
Kept her tuned up, too.
Johnny never knew what hit him when he first met Julia.
He used to be so wild and free.
Next in line.
Time treats everybody like a fool. Johnny had a 57 Chevy, 4 on the floor and a 429. We used to take it out on a wild horse pike, run it out to the end of the line. You gotta roll with the punches, and the sun is sinking low. Gotta roll with the punches. Honey, we ain't never going home.
Well, Joe, you old dog, you. I knew you had this puppy stowed away somewhere.
You ready, Billy?
Oh, yeah. Had some fun, didn't we, sweetheart? Go on.
Give it to Carrie. No, Carrie. Get out in front of the cars. When we flash our brights, raise the gun and fire once in the air.
Daddy, were you crazy?
Do it. You know, Billy, you win, you go free.
And if I lose?
I'll kill you.
I respect you, Joe.
Got a destination down in Dead Man's Land. Gonna see my baby, gonna shoot my lord. Yeah, that old wretched road. That old wretched road.
Looks like you win, Iceman. Wrong.
And the sun is sinking low. You gotta roll with the punches. But honey, we ain't never going home.
Well, that certainly gives new meaning to the term burn rubber. As for me, I've got to get back to work. The group has decided to do something classical. We're trying to choose between A Midsummer Night's Scream and Julius Caesar. Care to watch from Hackstage? You know what they say, kiddies. The sleigh's the thing.
The night air was thick with smoke and the scent of iron, a heavy, almost tangible weight that pressed against the lungs of anyone daring enough to walk the streets of this forsaken town after sundown. Dim streetlights flickered in the distance, their yellow halos barely cutting through the shadows that clung to the cracked pavements and sagging rooftops. It was a night that seemed to stretch forever, a prelude to some inevitable, sinister confrontation, a showdown no one yet realized was looming. On the outskirts of the town, where the abandoned factories gave way to overgrown fields, a solitary figure moved with a predatory grace. His long coat trailed behind him like a shadow refusing to stay quiet. The man's eyes glinted in the moonlight, sharp and calculating, scanning the darkness as if he could read the intentions of the night itself. He was known in whispered rumors as Lucien, a man whose past was stitched together with violence and deceit, whose presence alone could make even the boldest of criminals rethink their plans. His hands, gloved in black leather, hovered just above the worn hilt of the revolver he carried, a weapon older than some of the derelict buildings surrounding him. Lucien's steps led him to the derelict main street, where the remnants of a once thriving town now echoed with the ghosts of better days. Storefronts were shattered, windows boarded, doors hung loosely on rusted hinges. The faint sound of rats scuttling across debris-filled alleyways accompanied his approach, each squeak a reminder that life persisted even in decay. He stopped at the edge of a crumbling fountain, its water long since evaporated, leaving only a cracked basin that reflected the silver light of the moon. Here, he waited. Minutes stretched into an eternity, and the stillness of the night grew oppressive. Every creak of a board, every rustle of the dry leaves, felt amplified, like a drumbeat counting down the seconds to a violent crescendo. Lucien's mind was a battlefield of strategies and contingencies. He had learned long ago that in the world he inhabited, the line between hunter and hunted was as thin as a blade, and one misstep could be fatal. He adjusted the position of his revolver, ensuring it rested within easy reach, while his ears caught the faintest whisper of movement from the shadows behind him. From the gloom, a figure emerged, slow and deliberate, carrying a presence that seemed to absorb the dim light around it. This was Marlowe, a man infamous for his ruthless precision, whose reputation had been built on broken promises and shattered lives. Marlowe had eyes like polished coal, dark and cold, reflecting no warmth, no hint of hesitation. In his hand, he held a briefcase, worn and battered, the contents unknown to all but him, yet rumored to hold secrets that could tip the balance of power in this forgotten town. As he stepped closer, the tension between the two men was palpable, a taut string ready to snap. Their first words were unnecessary, the silence spoke volumes. Each knew the other's history, the trail of blood and betrayal that led to this encounter. It was as if the very air recognized the significance of the moment, thickening, resisting movement, holding its breath. Lucien's eyes narrowed, tracking Marlowe's every step, noting the subtle shift of his weight, the barely perceptible flex of his fingers around the briefcase handle. A flicker of wind swept through the street, carrying with it the faint smell of gunpowder, the omen of the violence that was about to unfold. Without warning, Marlowe stopped, planting the briefcase on the cracked pavement. He reached inside and produced a small, metallic object, tossing it lightly in his hand before letting it clatter to the ground. Lucien recognized the sound immediately, a silver switchblade, gleaming under the moon's scrutiny. The blade opened with a sharp click, and Marlowe's grin was the kind that promised pain and chaos. The showdown had begun, not with words, but with the silent, deadly language of men accustomed to killing. Lucien's hand moved to his revolver, but instead of drawing it, he let the leather glove slide over the metal, his fingers caressing the cold steel with familiarity. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The years had taught him that in moments like this, hesitation could be lethal. Marlowe took a step forward, confident, almost cocky, and Lucien matched it, their movements a mirror of tension and anticipation. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled, its hollow sound a grim punctuation to the prelude of violence. The first strike came not from the blade, but from the mind. Lucien lunged forward with unexpected speed, his coat flaring like a shadow taking flight. Marlowe twisted, narrowly avoiding the swipe of Lucien's fist, and the knife danced dangerously close to Lucien's side. Sparks of panic flashed in the moonlit eyes of bystanders, though none were brave enough to intervene. The fight was personal, intimate, brutal, a chess game played with fists and steel, where each move was calculated and each mistake could cost a life. A series of rapid strikes and parries followed, echoing through the empty streets. The sound of metal clashing, boots scuffing against cracked pavement, and ragged breaths filled the night. Lucien feinted left, only to strike right, forcing Marlowe back several steps. The knife glinted wickedly under the streetlights, a promise of imminent danger, yet Lucien's calm, deliberate movements countered every attempt at aggression. He had learned to anticipate violence, to move with the rhythm of chaos itself, turning the street into a stage where survival was the only performance that mattered. Minutes, or perhaps hours, passed in a blur of motion. Neither man gave quarter, neither man faltered. Sweat mingled with blood, staining the cracked pavement, and the shadows themselves seemed to recoil from the brutality on display. The briefcase lay forgotten, a silent observer to the ferocity of the confrontation. Then, as if guided by an unseen hand, Lucien disarmed Marlowe with a swift twist of the wrist, sending the knife skittering across the street. The metallic clatter resonated like the final note of a symphony, and for a heartbeat, the night fell silent once more. Marlowe's eyes burned with hatred, his grin replaced by a snarl, as he reached for the revolver at his hip. Lucien anticipated the move, stepping in close, their bodies almost touching, each breath mingling in the cold night air. Time slowed, each second stretching into an eternity. Lucien's fingers closed around Marlowe's wrist, twisting with controlled force, and the gun fell to the pavement with a hollow thud. The showdown, though far from over, had shifted in momentum. Lucien's advantage was clear, yet the danger remained, a knife-edge balance between victory and death. From the rooftops, unseen eyes watched, recording every detail, every subtle movement, as if the town itself were bearing witness to the final act of a story written long before either man had drawn breath. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, a broken sound that seemed almost ceremonial, and the wind carried the echo of something darker, a sense that this night was only the beginning of a chain of events that would ripple far beyond the empty streets. Lucien's chest heaved, his muscles tense, every nerve alive, ready for the next move in a game that had no rules, only consequences. He stepped back, allowing Marlowe to recover slightly, the tension between them electric, almost visible in the flickering light. Neither spoke, yet the unspoken challenge hung heavy in the air. Every instinct screamed, every memory sharpened, reminding Lucien why he survived while so many others had fallen. This was more than a fight, it was the reckoning of past sins, the collision of histories, a confrontation that would echo long after the blood had dried and the shadows had reclaimed the streets. And then, without warning, Marlowe lunged again, faster, desperate, his eyes blazing with fury. Lucien's mind reacted instinctively, moving with a precision that bordered on preternatural. The next few moments would define everything: life, death, triumph, and ruin. And so, under the indifferent gaze of the moon, the true showdown began in earnest, a dance of violence, wits, and survival that would leave its mark on both men forever. The struggle between Lucien and Marlowe intensified, the quiet streets no longer just a stage but a cage, each corner, each shadow a potential threat. Lucien's breath came in controlled bursts, his mind operating on a level beyond instinct, calculating every possible outcome. Marlowe's movements, erratic and furious, betrayed a man who had relied too long on fear to protect himself. Lucien's eyes followed every twitch of muscle, every shift of weight, reading the story of attack and defense in the smallest gestures. In that moment, there was no past, no future, only the violence of now, raw and unrelenting. Marlowe's desperation gave him a reckless edge. He lunged again, knife glinting under the flickering streetlights, aiming for a swift, decisive strike. Lucien sidestepped, feeling the air split where the blade had passed, and countered with a low, precise sweep of his boot that sent Marlowe stumbling backward. The man's balance faltered, his grin replaced by a flash of panic, yet he regained his stance with a furious snarl. This was not a man accustomed to losing, and Lucien knew that to survive, he had to anticipate not only the next strike but the one after that. The night seemed to respond to their conflict. A sudden gust of wind carried debris across the street, papers, and broken glass spinning like phantoms caught in a tempest. The sound of shattering glass and rustling leaves punctuated the clash of steel and the heavy thud of fists against flesh. Lucien struck with a precision born of years of discipline, his hands moving almost too fast to follow, a blur of calculated motion. Marlowe's defenses were strong, but raw power could not overcome the elegance of skill and foresight. Marlowe's eyes darted around, searching for any advantage, any tool or weapon he could use to shift the battle in his favor. His gaze fell on the abandoned storefronts, the remnants of shelves and counters long since broken. Without hesitation, he grabbed a wooden plank, swinging it with brutal force. Lucien ducked under the arc, the plank crashing into the wall behind him, splintering wood scattering across the cracked pavement. Sparks flew as metal met metal, or perhaps it was the reflection of the streetlight off the knife in Marlowe's hand. In that instant, the fight became a chaotic dance, a blur of motion against the still backdrop of a town forgotten by time. Lucien's mind remained unnervingly calm. Each movement, each calculation, was precise. He allowed Marlowe to expend energy, to reveal patterns, to make mistakes. With a feint, he drew Marlowe in, letting him believe he had an opening. Then, in a sudden, fluid motion, Lucien twisted, using Marlowe's momentum against him, sending the man crashing into the remnants of a storefront. Glass shattered, dust rose, and the briefcase that had once been a silent witness to the confrontation tumbled across the street. Marlowe lay sprawled, a flash of rage and disbelief in his coal-black eyes, yet he was far from defeated. Lucien didn't give him the chance to recover. He advanced slowly, deliberately, each step measured, each motion a study in controlled menace. His presence was magnetic, an almost supernatural pull that forced Marlowe to focus solely on him. The knife gleamed, the briefcase lay abandoned, and yet the sense of anticipation was suffocating. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity as the two men faced each other across the debris-strewn pavement. Marlowe's chest heaved, his fingers trembling around the knife handle, his mind racing for an escape or an advantage. "Lucien," Marlowe hissed, voice low and venomous, "you don't understand what's at stake." Lucien's response was silence. Words were unnecessary, the dance of violence spoke louder than any declaration. He moved with a calculated grace, circling, probing, testing Marlowe's reactions. The wind whispered through broken windows and abandoned alleys, carrying with it a faint scent of decay and iron, the perfume of confrontation. Marlowe lunged again, this time faster, the knife slicing through the air, sharp and merciless. Lucien met the attack head-on, catching the blade with the flat of his hand, the metal vibrating through his palm, a tactile warning of the danger he faced. A struggle ensued, each man pushing, pulling, testing strength against skill. Lucien's mind catalogued every detail, the tension in Marlowe's shoulders, the angle of his grip, the way he shifted weight from foot to foot. He anticipated the next strike before it happened, pivoting, twisting, and forcing Marlowe to overcommit. With a sudden, decisive motion, Lucien grabbed the man's wrist, twisting sharply and disarming him once more. The knife skidded across the street, embedding itself in the cracked asphalt. Marlowe gasped, fury burning in his chest, realizing that Lucien's control of the encounter was absolute. Yet even in defeat, Marlowe's mind worked, calculating, plotting. He lunged again, fists flying, catching Lucien off guard with a flurry of desperate blows. Lucien staggered slightly but regained his composure, absorbing the impact, countering with precision strikes that forced Marlowe backward. Pain was a distant companion, survival was the only focus. The street became a blur of motion, shadow and steel, sweat and blood mixing with dust and debris. Each man knew that one mistake could end everything. Suddenly, from the shadows, a new presence emerged. A figure, cloaked in darkness, silent as the grave, watched the battle unfold with interest. Their eyes gleamed, reflecting the chaos below, and though they made no sound, their presence added another layer of tension. Lucien noticed the shift in the atmosphere immediately, a prickling at the back of his neck that spoke of hidden danger. Marlowe, oblivious, continued his assault, unaware that the game had grown even more complex. The figure stepped closer, revealing a flash of movement, a glint of metal in hand, perhaps a weapon, perhaps something else entirely. Lucien's instincts screamed caution, urging him to anticipate not only Marlowe's moves but the intentions of this new participant. He adjusted his stance, every muscle coiled, ready for another confrontation. Marlowe, driven by rage and desperation, lunged once more, but Lucien sidestepped with a fluid motion, letting Marlowe's momentum carry him forward. The newcomer finally revealed themselves fully, a woman with eyes as sharp as daggers and movements as precise as a predator. She landed gracefully atop a nearby fire escape, watching the unfolding battle with an analytical gaze. "Enough," she called, her voice cutting through the night like a whip. Both men froze, the tension hanging heavy in the air, a taut wire waiting to snap. Lucien's gaze met hers, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. This was a player who demanded respect, whose intervention could change the outcome entirely. Marlowe sneered, defiance in his every movement. "Stay out of this," he spat, but the woman's presence was undeniable, commanding. She leapt down with a fluid grace, landing lightly between the two men. Her movements were deliberate, confident, and yet there was a warning in her stance, a promise that crossing her would come with consequences far beyond what either man could anticipate. Lucien assessed the situation quickly, recognizing the potential for alliance or further conflict. The night stretched on, the echoes of previous blows lingering in the cracked pavement and broken storefronts. Lucien and the woman exchanged subtle glances, an unspoken understanding forming between them. Marlowe, frustrated and increasingly reckless, read nothing but anger and suspicion in their movements. The game had shifted, the showdown was no longer just between two men. It had expanded, complicated, becoming a chessboard of strategy, cunning, and deadly precision. Every muscle in Lucien's body remained alert, every sense sharpened. The woman moved with purpose, positioning herself to anticipate Marlowe's attacks, her presence amplifying Lucien's control over the encounter. Marlowe's desperation escalated, his strikes becoming wilder, less calculated. Lucien, relying on years of experience, guided the flow of battle, subtly using the woman's position to corner and contain Marlowe, a predator orchestrating a trap with finesse. And then, as if the night itself had conspired, Marlowe made a mistake, a misstep, a misjudged swing. Lucien capitalized immediately, forcing the man to stumble against the remnants of the broken storefront. The knife lay discarded, the briefcase untouched, and Marlowe's chest heaved as he realized the tables had turned irreversibly. Sweat mingled with dust, blood streaked across the cracked asphalt, and the shadows seemed to lean in, observing the inevitable outcome. Lucien stepped forward, every movement deliberate, authoritative, a master asserting control. Marlowe glared, rage and fear warring in his eyes, but there was nothing left to do. The showdown, though far from completely over, had decisively shifted in Lucien's favor. The presence of the woman, the unpredictability of the night, and Lucien's own unmatched skill had converged to create a moment of triumph, precarious and fragile, yet undeniable. From the rooftops, unseen eyes continued to watch, silent witnesses to a confrontation that was far more than simple violence. The consequences of this night, of this battle, would echo far beyond the empty streets, a ripple of fear and revelation that neither man could yet comprehend. Lucien's chest heaved, mind racing, eyes scanning, every sense alive. The night was far from over, and the showdown, as he knew, had many more turns yet to come. The night seemed to exhale as the tension between the three figures, Lucien, Marlowe, and the mysterious woman, hung thick in the air. Shadows stretched like grasping fingers across the broken streets, curling into corners and slipping under shattered doors. Lucien's eyes remained locked on Marlowe, reading every twitch of muscle, every tightening of the jaw. The woman's presence, silent but unmistakable, gave him a sense of both reassurance and caution. There was a rhythm now, a dangerous ballet where each step could mean survival or death. Marlowe's eyes flicked between Lucien and the woman, calculating, desperate, trying to predict their next move. He clenched his fists, knuckles white against the grime of his palms, and took a step backward, almost as if trying to buy time to think. "Who the hell are you?" he spat, voice trembling with a mix of anger and unease. The woman's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. She did not speak, letting her gaze alone convey the weight of experience and authority. Lucien's posture remained calm, almost inviting, but every line of his body radiated lethal intent. Marlowe's desperation pushed him into action. He lunged suddenly toward Lucien, fists swinging in a chaotic fury. Lucien sidestepped with ease, allowing Marlowe's momentum to carry him forward, only to pivot and deliver a sharp elbow that caught him in the ribs. The impact was enough to make the man stumble against the remnants of a broken street lamp, yet he quickly regained his footing, his breathing ragged, his fury undiminished. The battle was as much psychological as it was physical. Lucien understood that breaking Marlowe's resolve would be as crucial as disabling his attacks. The woman moved closer, her steps light but deliberate, positioning herself to block any sudden flanking attempt. Her eyes were sharp, analytical, and Lucien felt the unspoken coordination between them. He had not invited her presence, yet her timing and strategy indicated experience that rivaled his own. Marlowe, realizing he was now outmaneuvered, gritted his teeth and scanned the area for anything, any object, any advantage that could shift the balance back in his favor. His gaze landed on the overturned fire escape ladder nearby, its rusted metal a potential weapon. With a grunt, he lunged toward it, gripping the jagged edges, intending to swing it at Lucien. But Lucien anticipated the move. With a swift sidestep, he grabbed Marlowe's wrist mid-motion, twisting sharply. The ladder clanged against the pavement, falling to the side, and Marlowe staggered, catching himself on a nearby wall. Sweat dripped from his brow, his anger now mingled with fear, yet he refused to surrender. Lucien's breathing remained steady, almost meditative, his mind cataloguing every detail. He could hear the subtle shifts in Marlowe's stance, the uneven distribution of weight, the faint rhythm of his heartbeat. Every muscle, every gesture was data, and he used it to guide his next move. He circled, deliberately slow, each step measured, coaxing Marlowe into an overextension. The woman mirrored his motions subtly, a silent partner in an unspoken alliance that made them nearly untouchable as a pair. Marlowe lashed out, swinging wildly, fists colliding with nothing but air. Lucien ducked and countered with a precise jab to the stomach, forcing Marlowe to double over. The man gasped, his body shaking with effort and pain, but there was no hesitation in his eyes, only the raw determination of a cornered predator. Lucien's strategy was clear: exhaustion and disorientation, eroding both physical and mental resilience until Marlowe could no longer maintain control. The woman stepped closer now, her presence a sharp reminder of the danger surrounding him. She was poised, her body tense yet controlled, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of escalation. Marlowe's gaze flicked toward her, confusion and frustration mingling with rage. "Stay out of it," he barked, but his voice lacked authority. It was clear that he had underestimated her, that her skill and positioning had tipped the scales beyond his control. Lucien struck with a sudden motion, closing the distance in an instant. His hand shot forward, gripping Marlowe's shoulder, twisting, forcing the man into a defensive crouch. The subtle snap of bones, a warning rather than a breaking, communicated the inevitability of Lucien's dominance without revealing all of his strength. Marlowe staggered, breath ragged, and for the first time, doubt flickered across his features. He realized that brute force alone would not be enough. Cunning and strategy were now his only potential avenues. But Lucien was relentless. Each strike, each feint, each measured step was designed not merely to harm but to manipulate, to control the tempo and flow of the encounter. Marlowe attempted a desperate swing at Lucien's head, but Lucien leaned back, narrowly avoiding contact. The woman's presence behind him created a subtle but insurmountable pressure, preventing any flanking maneuver. Marlowe's attacks became increasingly wild, lacking precision, his frustration manifesting in erratic movements that left him vulnerable. The street seemed to pulse with tension. Every shattered window, every broken signpost, every scattered piece of debris became part of the silent theater of the fight. The night itself appeared to watch, shadows bending and twisting as though in anticipation. Lucien moved like water, flowing around Marlowe's attacks, using minimal effort to counter maximum aggression. He was a predator who had spent years reading and manipulating threats, a man whose very presence altered the behavior of those around him. Marlowe made a sudden, reckless attempt to grab a shard of broken glass from the pavement. Lucien anticipated the motion, pivoting swiftly, and grabbed Marlowe's wrist once more. The shard clattered harmlessly to the ground, its sharp edge flashing in the dim light, a dangerous but ineffective weapon. Marlowe's breath came faster, his anger now mingled with panic. He realized too late that the fight was no longer in his favor. He was being corralled, contained, maneuvered into submission by two opponents whose skill far outmatched his own. The woman, her eyes never leaving Marlowe, shifted her stance subtly, ensuring he remained trapped between her and Lucien. There was a silence that stretched for a heartbeat, heavy and charged, the calm before the final storm. Lucien spoke, his voice low but authoritative, slicing through the tension like a blade. "It's over, Marlowe. You've lost control." His words were not a threat, they were a statement of fact. Marlowe's jaw tightened, fury battling with the creeping recognition of defeat. He made one last desperate lunge, fists flying, but Lucien sidestepped with ease, guiding him with a twist and a shove toward the pavement. The man hit the ground hard, the impact sending a shiver through his body. Dust rose around him, mixing with the faint traces of blood from the earlier exchanges. His chest heaved as he struggled to regain composure, eyes wild, realizing that he had been outmaneuvered completely. Lucien did not rush forward. He maintained a calm, measured stance, watching, analyzing. The fight had been physical, yes, but it was also psychological, a demonstration of control and intellect. Marlowe's desperation was evident in every twitch, every shallow breath. The woman, her posture impeccable, mirrored Lucien's calm authority, a silent partner in maintaining dominance. The street itself seemed to hold its breath, shadows stretching as if to witness the inevitable conclusion. Finally, Marlowe collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, shoulders slumped, the fight draining from him like blood from a wound. His gaze flicked between Lucien and the woman, a mixture of defiance and grudging respect forming in his eyes. "You're not like anyone I've faced," he muttered, voice barely audible. Lucien's eyes met his, unyielding and unreadable. "And neither are you," he replied simply, his words heavy with implication. The woman stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on Marlowe's shoulder, a subtle gesture of authority and reassurance. He flinched at first, then slowly relaxed, recognizing that resistance was no longer an option. The night air was thick with tension, but now it carried a hint of resolution, a shift from chaos toward the fragile balance that would follow. The showdown, though far from finished, had reached a crucial turning point. Lucien's gaze swept the street, taking in the shattered debris, the fallen knife, the abandoned briefcase, and the broken remnants of what had once been a simple confrontation. Everything had changed in moments, alliances formed, dominance established, and the rules rewritten in blood, sweat, and strategy. Marlowe's breathing slowed, the fury still flickering in his eyes but tempered by the undeniable fact that he had been outmatched. From the shadows, the night seemed to whisper, carrying the promise of consequences yet to unfold. Lucien, the woman, and the subdued Marlowe stood in the street, the remnants of violence surrounding them, the echoes of the encounter vibrating in the silence that followed. Every sense remained alert, every muscle coiled, yet the immediate threat had passed. They knew the confrontation was only a prelude, the true challenges were still ahead, waiting beyond the cracks and shadows of the town. The streetlights flickered once more, casting long, wavering shadows over the trio. Lucien finally exhaled, a slow, deliberate release of tension. The woman's eyes met his, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, and Marlowe, kneeling and exhausted, understood that tonight had marked a turning point. The showdown had shifted, but the night was far from over. Something deeper, darker, waited beyond the immediate battle, a consequence that none of them could yet anticipate. The stillness that settled over the street was deceptive, a fragile veil over a night that still brimmed with tension. Lucien's sharp eyes scanned the shadows, calculating, anticipating. Even with Marlowe subdued, the encounter was far from over. In the distance, the faint creak of a sign swinging in the wind, the distant howl of a dog, and the whisper of leaves moving along cracked pavement reminded him that the world had not paused for their struggle. The woman's presence, equally vigilant, was a constant reassurance, but the unspoken understanding between them was that danger was rarely singular. Marlowe struggled to his feet, leaning against the wall for support, his chest rising and falling in ragged gasps. His gaze flicked from Lucien to the woman, a mixture of fear, resentment, and begrudging respect etched across his features. "You think this ends tonight?" he spat, voice hoarse yet venomous. Lucien's response was a measured stare, unwavering, letting the silence speak for him. Words were weapons too easily misused. The demonstration of control had been far more effective. Marlowe knew that his bravado would not suffice here. The woman stepped closer to Lucien, positioning herself slightly to his side. She had the grace of someone who had navigated countless confrontations, the awareness to move without drawing unnecessary attention while maintaining maximum influence over the outcome. Her eyes, dark and piercing, tracked Marlowe's every twitch, every subtle shift in stance. Lucien recognized her skill immediately. This was a partner who could match him step for step, whose presence turned a confrontation into a precise, surgical operation. Together, they were a unit both formidable and lethal. Marlowe, still nursing the sting of Lucien's dominance, glanced around desperately, his mind racing for an edge. He spotted the discarded briefcase, its contents a potential trump card, a hidden variable in the unfolding night. With a quick, calculated motion, he lunged toward it, but Lucien was faster. The man's hand shot out, gripping Marlowe's shoulder, and with a sharp twist, he sent him sprawling back against the crumbling wall. The briefcase skidded harmlessly across the pavement, its secrets remaining inaccessible, a reminder of the futility of Marlowe's attempts. The street had become a silent witness, broken windows and boarded doors reflecting the flickering light, shadows bending and stretching as if drawn into the drama. Dust rose from the pavement with every movement, particles catching the dim glow, turning the night into a surreal theater of anticipation and fear. Lucien's movements were deliberate, fluid, and precise. Every shift of weight, every flex of muscle, was calculated to maintain dominance while minimizing unnecessary risk. Marlowe, by contrast, had begun to rely increasingly on desperation rather than strategy. Sweat gleamed on his forehead, mixing with the grime of the night, and his breaths came in uneven bursts. He lunged again, fists flying, but Lucien's response was instinctive and calculated. He blocked, parried, and countered with a series of controlled strikes that left Marlowe reeling. The pattern was clear. Lucien was shaping the battle, guiding it toward a conclusion of his design. Every misstep, every overextension by Marlowe was noted, remembered, and exploited. The fight was no longer simply physical, it had become an intricate game of positioning and psychological pressure. The woman, moving with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to controlling chaos, subtly shifted her stance, closing off potential avenues of escape or attack for Marlowe. She did not speak, but her gaze was enough to command attention, to enforce a boundary. Lucien's eyes met hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement of coordination. Together, they moved like shadows, synchronized yet independent, a dual force that made Marlowe's wild flailing appear even more futile. Marlowe's mind raced. He understood, on some level, that brute force would not win this encounter. He attempted a diversion, swinging toward Lucien with a wild, arcing strike, while simultaneously feinting toward the woman. Lucien anticipated the move, stepping aside gracefully and delivering a calculated elbow to Marlowe's side. The man staggered, winded, pain flashing across his features. His feint was met with immediate countermeasures, his strategy unraveling under the pressure of two controlled, experienced adversaries. The night around them seemed to hold its breath. Every crack in the pavement, every broken signpost, every flickering streetlight contributed to the surreal atmosphere of a confrontation that felt both eternal and inevitable. Dust swirled around them with each movement, catching the pale light and highlighting the sweat and blood streaking across Marlowe's face. Lucien's hands were steady, his strikes purposeful, each motion designed to exploit weakness without overexertion. The woman's subtle movements amplified his control, a presence that forced Marlowe into defensive patterns, limiting his options. Marlowe's frustration grew, his attacks becoming increasingly reckless. He grabbed at the nearest object, a loose pipe lying among the debris, and swung it wildly. Lucien sidestepped, ducking under the arc, and with a smooth, practiced motion, twisted Marlowe's wrist, sending the pipe clattering across the street. The man gritted his teeth, rage and fear intermingling, as he realized that every effort to gain an advantage was being systematically neutralized. For a moment, Marlowe froze, chest heaving, his mind searching desperately for some hidden strategy, some secret leverage. Lucien advanced slowly, deliberately, maintaining pressure without overcommitting. Every step was measured, controlling the rhythm of the confrontation. The woman mirrored his movements, ensuring Marlowe could not flank or escape. The combined presence of both adversaries left him trapped in a cage of precision and experience. "Lucien," Marlowe spat, voice trembling with anger, "you can't keep me down forever." His words carried a mixture of bravado and desperation, but Lucien's gaze remained steady, unyielding. "We'll see about that," he replied quietly, letting the calm authority in his tone underscore the futility of resistance. The night hung heavy, the silence between them thick with unspoken threats and the anticipation of inevitable consequences. Marlowe lunged again, his movements increasingly frantic. Lucien sidestepped, caught the man's wrist mid-motion, and forced him to stumble into the corner of a broken lamppost. Pain radiated through Marlowe's body, and his breath hitched, but he refused to collapse entirely. The street had become a theater of dominance, each movement a statement of control and consequence. The shadows seemed to bend toward the struggle, the night itself acknowledging the inevitability of Lucien's authority. The woman stepped forward, positioning herself to intercept any further reckless strikes. Her presence was a silent but formidable barrier, ensuring that Marlowe's remaining energy could be channeled into defeat rather than escape. Lucien's eyes met hers once more, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a recognition of mutual understanding and skill. The two of them were a unit now, a coordinated force of lethal precision that left Marlowe scrambling for options he no longer possessed. Desperation drove Marlowe to one last feint, a sudden drop to the ground followed by a sweeping kick aimed at Lucien's legs. Lucien anticipated the move, stepping aside and guiding Marlowe's momentum past him. The man sprawled onto the cracked pavement, dust and debris scattering around him. Pain flashed across his face, and for the first time, he faltered, realization dawning that resistance had reached its limit. Lucien did not move to strike again immediately. Instead, he allowed the silence to settle, letting Marlowe absorb the weight of his position. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, wavering shadows that stretched across the broken asphalt. The night seemed alive, every creak of wood, every rustle of leaves, every distant howl contributing to the charged atmosphere. Marlowe's chest rose and fell rapidly, his body exhausted, his mind racing for a solution that did not exist. The woman stepped closer, her presence unwavering, her gaze locking onto Marlowe's with quiet authority. She made no sudden movements, no threatening gestures, yet the implication of her skill and control was undeniable. Marlowe's eyes flicked between her and Lucien, frustration and fear mixing, as he realized the full extent of his disadvantage. Every strike, every feint, every desperate attempt had been countered, controlled, and neutralized. He was trapped, a predator contained by forces far greater than his own. Lucien finally spoke, his voice calm, deliberate, and heavy with authority. "It's over, Marlowe. You've exhausted every option." The words hung in the night, a clear statement of dominance. Marlowe's lips trembled, his chest heaving, as he absorbed the weight of the confrontation. The woman's presence reinforced the message. There was no escape, no hidden advantage, no miracle remaining. The battle had reached its conclusion in favor of those who had maintained control throughout. Marlowe's shoulders slumped, defeat finally registering in his eyes. The rage that had driven him moments before now mingled with resignation. Lucien and the woman exchanged a brief glance, a silent acknowledgement of the effectiveness of their combined strategy. The street around them remained broken, scarred by the struggle, yet the immediate threat had passed. For now, the night belonged to Lucien and his ally, a fragile peace settling over the aftermath of violence. The night air felt heavier after the confrontation, each breath laden with the tension that lingered long after the physical struggle had ceased. Lucien remained vigilant, eyes scanning the streets for any further disturbance. Though Marlowe had been subdued, the knowledge that danger rarely traveled alone kept his senses razor-sharp. The woman beside him moved with silent assurance, her presence both a shield and a statement. This battle might have ended, but the night still held countless unseen threats. Marlowe slumped against the wall, sweat and blood mingling on his face, bruises already forming across his ribs and forearms. His chest rose and fell in ragged gasps as he tried to collect his thoughts. He was defiant, yet the fire in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by the dawning realization that brute force and cunning alone had failed him. He had been tested, and the result was undeniable. Lucien and the woman had outmaneuvered him at every turn, controlling not only the fight but the very flow of the night itself. "I should have ended this sooner," Marlowe muttered, more to himself than to anyone else, his voice tinged with a mix of frustration and grudging respect. He rubbed his jaw, still stinging from Lucien's precise strikes, and looked around at the street littered with debris. Broken glass sparkled under the dim streetlights, reflecting the remnants of violence, while the air carried the faint, metallic scent of blood. Even in exhaustion, Marlowe's mind raced, searching for one last thread to grasp, one angle he had not yet considered. Lucien did not respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on Marlowe, studying the smallest twitch of muscle, the subtle tension in the man's shoulders. Experience had taught him that the defeated could still be dangerous if underestimated. The night was full of shadows, and even a broken adversary could become a threat if allowed time to recover. Beside him, the woman mirrored his caution, her body poised, ready to react at the slightest sign of movement. Together, they formed a silent wall of authority, unspoken yet unmistakable. Marlowe shifted his weight uncomfortably, eyes darting between them. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" he finally spat, his voice low but biting. Lucien's gaze did not waver. "Control is a matter of patience," he replied, voice measured, almost cold. "And skill. Two things you've clearly neglected in favor of brute instinct." The words cut deeper than any strike could, a reminder that domination was not just physical but psychological, a lesson Marlowe was learning at a painful, exhausting pace. The woman's eyes, dark and unwavering, met Lucien's briefly before returning to Marlowe. She stepped closer, her presence subtle yet commanding, a silent warning that any sudden move would be met with immediate and decisive force. Marlowe flinched slightly, recognizing instinctively that he was trapped not just by Lucien's skill but by the combined power of their coordination. He had underestimated her, and that mistake had shifted the balance irreversibly. Marlowe took a hesitant step back, still breathing heavily. You don't understand what I'm capable of," he muttered, though the certainty in his voice had diminished. Lucien tilted his head slightly, the motion almost imperceptible, and replied, "Perhaps. But I understand enough to know when a threat is no longer manageable by simple aggression." Every word was deliberate, every pause calculated to reinforce dominance without unnecessary confrontation. The street seemed to echo the weight of his authority, the shadows stretching as if acknowledging the shift in power. The night remained tense, silent except for the occasional gust of wind that stirred debris across the cracked pavement. Marlowe's frustration simmered beneath the surface, visible in the way he clenched his fists and shifted his stance. He was exhausted, battered, yet defiance lingered, an ember that refused to die. Lucien observed this, knowing full well that the real danger lay not in the immediate threat but in the potential for desperation-fueled recklessness. Marlowe's eyes flicked toward the briefcase that had lain abandoned since the beginning of the confrontation. A glimmer of hope sparked in his expression, a last-ditch attempt to regain leverage. With a sudden, jerky motion, he lunged toward it. Lucien, anticipating the move, reacted instantly. He blocked Marlowe's path, intercepting him with minimal effort yet maximum effect. The briefcase slid harmlessly across the pavement, untouched, its contents remaining a mystery and a reminder of Marlowe's ineffectual gambit. Lucien took a deliberate step forward, closing the distance slowly. Each movement was measured, unhurried, yet filled with an implicit threat. Marlowe's eyes followed him, darting nervously, calculating, yet understanding that there was no viable escape. Beside Lucien, the woman mirrored his steps, subtly positioning herself to ensure that any sudden movement from Marlowe would be contained. The two of them, silent and coordinated, formed a wall of authority that left no room for defiance. Marlowe's voice trembled slightly as he spoke again. "You think you've won," he said, attempting to maintain some semblance of bravado. Lucien's response was calm, almost clinical. "I've simply ensured that your options are exhausted," he said. "Victory is irrelevant when survival is the only consideration." His words were a reminder that control was not about ego or pride, it was about strategy, foresight, and execution. The woman stepped forward slightly, her presence a subtle reinforcement of Lucien's dominance. She did not speak, but her eyes, dark and unyielding, conveyed an unambiguous warning. Any further resistance would be met with consequences far beyond what Marlowe had experienced thus far. He swallowed hard, recognizing instinctively that the night had turned decisively against him. The combination of Lucien's skill and her precision left him trapped, a man cornered with no path to freedom. For a moment, the street was silent, the tension palpable. Marlowe's chest heaved, his body trembling with exertion and fear. The broken remnants of the confrontation, the scattered debris, the shards of glass, the overturned objects, were silent witnesses to the battle's intensity. Every strike, every movement had been catalogued, analyzed, and countered with precision. Marlowe, exhausted and outmatched, could only watch as the reality of his defeat settled in. Lucien's gaze swept over the scene one final time, ensuring that every potential threat was accounted for. Marlowe remained kneeling, chest rising and falling rapidly, while the woman's presence reinforced the finality of the moment. The street, though still scarred by the struggle, had become a controlled environment once more. The immediate danger had passed, but the implications of the confrontation would linger far beyond the cracked pavement and flickering streetlights. Marlowe's defiance flickered once more, a brief, desperate spark. "You'll regret this," he muttered, voice low but venomous. Lucien's eyes remained fixed on him, unyielding. "Regret is irrelevant," he replied. "What matters is control, and control is no longer yours." The words hung in the air, heavy with authority and inevitability. The night seemed to acknowledge the shift, the tension gradually easing as the reality of Marlowe's defeat became undeniable. The woman stepped closer, subtly reinforcing the containment of Marlowe's space. Her presence was a silent statement of power and authority, an unspoken agreement that the night belonged to those who had mastered it. Marlowe's gaze flicked between the two of them, frustration and resignation mixing, as he absorbed the weight of his position. Every option he had considered had been neutralized, every move countered. The battle had ended not with brute force, but with skill, strategy, and the quiet assertion of dominance. Lucien finally exhaled, a slow, deliberate release of tension. The fight had tested his limits, and the night had delivered its lesson in full. Beside him, the woman's eyes remained vigilant, scanning the shadows for any remaining threat. Marlowe, kneeling and exhausted, understood fully that the confrontation had reached its conclusion. There was no escape, no hidden advantage, no miracle remaining. The street, scarred and battered, bore witness to a night of precise, calculated violence and unyielding control. The wind stirred, rustling debris across the cracked pavement, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke and iron. Lucien's gaze swept over the street one last time, cataloguing the aftermath, ensuring that the balance had been restored. Marlowe's chest heaved, his body trembling with exertion and recognition of defeat. The woman's presence reinforced the inevitability of the moment, a reminder that control had shifted irrevocably. For a few long moments, the night remained silent, broken only by distant echoes and the occasional creak of a broken sign swaying in the wind. Lucien and the woman stood side by side, vigilant and prepared, while Marlowe absorbed the weight of the confrontation. The immediate threat had passed, but the night had not finished with its lessons. Shadows stretched, and the air remained charged, as if the world itself acknowledged the turning of events. The night refused to release its grip. Even after Marlowe had been subdued, the street seemed alive with anticipation, as if the darkness itself were holding its breath. Lucien and the woman moved slowly among the debris, each step deliberate, surveying the scene with practiced caution. Shadows shifted with the flickering streetlights, twisting and stretching into shapes that could be threats or illusions conjured by the mind's anxious eye. The tension was far from dissipated, danger often came in waves, and the first confrontation was rarely the last. Marlowe's breathing had slowed slightly, but his chest still heaved with exertion. He leaned against the broken wall, sweat and blood streaked across his bruised face. He dared not rise fully, recognizing instinctively that any sudden movement might provoke immediate retaliation. His eyes flicked nervously between Lucien and the woman, calculating, searching for any sign of weakness. But they were both statues of precision, their movements fluid, coordinated, and full of an unspoken authority that demanded obedience or at least compliance. "Think carefully, Marlowe," Lucien's voice cut through the silence, low and deliberate. "Every move you make from here on is being watched. Every option you thought you had is no longer yours." His words were not a threat but a statement of fact, an assessment of reality delivered with clinical precision. The night seemed to respond to his tone, the wind stirring debris across the pavement, the shadows around them deepening, as if echoing his authority. The woman stepped closer to Lucien, subtly closing the distance between Marlowe and any potential avenues of escape. Her presence was a quiet assertion of dominance, a reminder that he was trapped not just physically but psychologically. Marlowe's fists clenched at his sides, the muscles trembling with residual adrenaline and mounting frustration. He knew he had been outmatched, each attempt to regain control had been expertly countered, leaving him exhausted, both in body and spirit. Marlowe's eyes darted to the scattered remnants of the briefcase, still lying untouched a few feet away. Desperation flared. With a sudden burst, he lunged toward it, hoping to seize something, anything, that could change the balance. But Lucien's reflexes were faster. In a single, fluid motion, he intercepted Marlowe's path, guiding him back with minimal effort but maximum impact. The briefcase skidded uselessly across the cracked asphalt, its contents remaining inaccessible, a symbol of Marlowe's futile attempts to regain leverage. The street was a theater of tension, the aftermath of their violent dance etched into every crack, every broken shard of glass, every splintered plank. Dust rose from the ground as Marlowe stumbled, the faint metallic scent of blood mixing with the night air. Lucien observed him carefully, noting the subtle signs of exhaustion, the way the man's eyes flicked nervously toward potential escape routes. Each small movement, each twitch of a muscle, was data information to be used in maintaining control and predicting behavior. The woman mirrored Lucien's vigilance, her presence a steady, silent reinforcement of authority. Marlowe realized, with a growing sense of unease, that he was outmatched not just in skill but in coordination. Their silent partnership left him isolated, forced to confront a reality he had been unwilling to accept until now. The fight had been as much psychological as physical, and the lessons of the night were clear. Strength without strategy was meaningless, and desperation was a dangerous currency when facing opponents this precise. Marlowe took a tentative step back, glancing at the broken street around him. You don't understand what's coming," he muttered, though the certainty in his tone was now diluted by exhaustion. Lucien's gaze did not waver. "I understand enough to know that your options are exhausted," he said simply. The statement was calm, almost clinical, yet heavy with inevitability. Marlowe's breath caught in his throat. He knew the truth in those words. Every gambit he had attempted had been neutralized, every feint countered, every desperate move anticipated. The wind shifted, rustling the debris across the cracked asphalt, carrying with it the faint whispers of the night. Lucien stepped closer, each movement deliberate, each gesture measured to maintain psychological and physical dominance. Marlowe's eyes darted to potential weapons, to any chance of leverage, But the street offered nothing he could use without immediate risk. The shadows themselves seemed to tighten around him, the flickering light casting strange shapes across the broken pavement, amplifying his sense of entrapment. The woman's movements were subtle but purposeful, positioning herself in a way that blocked any potential flanking maneuver. Marlowe's frustration mounted, his attacks increasingly wild, but every strike, every feint was anticipated, countered, and nullified with precision. He was trapped, caught in a web of skill and coordination he could not penetrate. For the first time, exhaustion was accompanied by a growing sense of fear not just of defeat but of the consequences that might follow. Lucien's voice broke the silence once more. "It's not about winning," he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. "It's about control. And control is what you've lost." The words resonated in the cold night air, echoing across the broken street. Marlowe's eyes flicked toward him, a mixture of anger, defiance, and dawning recognition crossing his features. He understood now that the fight was not merely about physical confrontation, it was a lesson in dominance, in strategy, in the inevitability of consequences when one miscalculates the depth of opposition. Marlowe staggered backward, leaning heavily against a crumbling wall for support. His breath came in uneven bursts, chest heaving, sweat mixing with blood and grime. He realized the full weight of his predicament. The fight was over, not because he had been overpowered entirely, but because every option had been foreseen, every potential advantage nullified. Lucien's authority, combined with the woman's precision, had left him completely exposed and vulnerable. For a long moment, silence reigned over the street, broken only by distant sounds, rustling leaves, a dog barking somewhere in the darkness, the faint creak of a swinging sign. Marlowe's defiance flickered once more, a brief ember of resistance, but it was fragile, easily smothered by the overwhelming presence of his opponents. Lucien's gaze swept over him, noting the exhaustion, the frustration, the dawning realization of defeat. The fight had tested him in every conceivable way, and the lessons had been unforgiving. The woman stepped slightly closer, reinforcing the containment. Her presence was a silent assertion of authority, a reminder that any sudden move would be met with immediate and decisive action. Marlowe's eyes darted between the two of them, frustration mingling with the recognition that he had been completely outmaneuvered. Every attempt at leverage, every feint and strike, had been countered, leaving him trapped and exhausted. Lucien finally exhaled, a slow, deliberate release of tension. The immediate threat had passed, but the night was far from finished. Marlowe remained kneeling, chest rising and falling rapidly, while the woman's gaze scanned the shadows for any residual threats. The street itself seemed to settle, the tension easing slightly, but the lessons of the night remained imprinted in every broken shard, every scuffed surface, every shadow. Marlowe's voice, trembling slightly, broke the silence. You may have won tonight," he muttered, "but this isn't over." Lucien's gaze remained unyielding. "Perhaps," he replied quietly, "but for now, you have learned the consequences of miscalculation. That is enough for tonight." The words hung in the air, heavy with authority and the unspoken promise of future vigilance. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, wavering shadows across the broken pavement. The wind stirred, lifting dust and debris, carrying with it the faint scent of iron and smoke. Lucien and the woman stood together, vigilant, poised, a silent testament to the precision and control that had defined the confrontation. Marlowe, kneeling and exhausted, absorbed the weight of his defeat, understanding the reality he had tried and failed to escape. The night's shadows seemed to stretch longer, folding around the broken street like a living entity, whispering secrets that only the vigilant could perceive. Lucien and the woman moved slowly, their steps measured, eyes scanning every corner, every alley, every possible hiding place for threats. The echoes of the earlier confrontation still lingered in the night air, the faint clang of metal, the sharp inhale of a breath, the subtle creak of a broken sign shifting in the wind. Though Marlowe had been contained, the world beyond that street was indifferent to the struggle, and danger remained a constant possibility. Marlowe, slumped against the jagged brick wall, was more subdued now, though his eyes still flickered with residual defiance. He had been tested, pushed beyond his limits, and yet the fire within him refused to die completely. His chest heaved with exertion, sweat and grime streaking his face as he tried to process the reality of his position. The street, littered with shards of glass, broken wood, and scattered debris, bore the scars of the struggle. Every scratch and dent seemed to mirror the tension still simmering in the air, a reminder that battles often leave marks long after the body has recovered. Lucien's gaze swept over the environment with calculated precision. Every shadow, every uneven patch of pavement, every discarded object was catalogued, not merely for its potential as a weapon but for what it revealed about the space itself. He noted the way the flickering streetlights cast elongated shadows, the subtle movements of leaves stirred by a restless wind, the faint echoes of distant life. Each detail was integrated into his understanding of the environment, allowing him to maintain control even in the absence of immediate physical threats. Beside him, the woman's movements were fluid and deliberate. She was an expert in silent vigilance, her presence a combination of restraint and readiness that amplified Lucien's own authority. Her eyes never left Marlowe, but they also scanned the periphery, calculating potential dangers, gauging risks, ensuring that no angle went unmonitored. Marlowe's attempts to recover his composure were futile under such scrutiny. Every twitch, every subtle shift of weight, every uneven breath was visible to two sets of eyes trained to detect weakness and opportunity. Marlowe shifted slightly, as if testing the boundaries of his confinement. "You think this is permanent," he muttered, voice hoarse but edged with defiance. Lucien's reply was calm, measured, carrying the weight of authority rather than aggression. "Permanent is irrelevant. What matters is understanding. Tonight you have learned a lesson in control, in consequence, and in limitation. That knowledge changes everything." The words were deliberate, a reminder that mastery of a situation was rarely about brute force alone. It required observation, patience, and psychological precision. The wind stirred again, lifting dust and debris, the faint metallic scent of blood still lingering in the cold night air. Marlowe's hands, shaking slightly from exertion and frustration, clenched into fists. He wanted to challenge, to strike, to assert some remnant of power, but every instinctive move had been anticipated, countered, and neutralized. The awareness of his own impotence was a gnawing pressure in his chest, and for the first time, he began to confront the true weight of his defeat. Lucien stepped closer, each motion deliberate, measured, unhurried. Marlowe's eyes followed him nervously, recognizing instinctively that any sudden movement might provoke an immediate and decisive reaction. Beside Lucien, the woman mirrored his motions, subtly reinforcing the perimeter of control, ensuring that no opportunity for resurgence remained. The combined presence of the two was suffocatingly precise, a wall of skill and authority that left Marlowe exposed, both physically and psychologically. For a moment, silence reigned. Only the distant sounds of the city, occasional footsteps, a dog barking far off, the faint hum of traffic, punctuated the night. Marlowe's chest heaved, his mind racing for solutions that no longer existed. Every path had been blocked, every option anticipated. The street had transformed from a simple battlefield into a theater of dominance, each element choreographed by unseen hands that dictated the outcome with cold precision. Marlowe's gaze darted to the scattered debris, remnants of the earlier struggle, the broken street lamp, the discarded briefcase, shards of glass catching the faint light. A fleeting thought flared within him, a desperate attempt to reclaim agency. He lunged toward the briefcase, hoping to retrieve anything that could alter the balance. Lucien reacted instantly, intercepting him with a fluid motion that combined leverage and force, guiding Marlowe past the briefcase without so much as a misstep. The man stumbled to the ground, the object remaining inaccessible, a silent testament to his futility. Exhaustion and frustration mingled visibly across Marlowe's features. Sweat dripped from his brow, mixing with dried blood, and his chest rose and fell unevenly. He realized, perhaps too late, that his approach had been predictable, his instincts insufficient against the calculated precision of two seasoned adversaries. Lucien and the woman moved in near-perfect synchrony, a subtle but powerful demonstration of control. The very air seemed charged with the weight of authority, every movement punctuated by an unspoken understanding of inevitability. The street itself seemed to respond to the tension, the shadows lengthening and contracting with the flickering streetlights. Even in the absence of immediate violence, the night carried a sense of foreboding, a reminder that the struggle had altered the environment, leaving marks both visible and unseen. Marlowe's senses were on high alert, yet he understood that awareness alone could not counter the tactical advantage of his opponents. Every potential opportunity had been neutralized, every possible maneuver accounted for. Lucien's voice cut through the silence once more, calm but unyielding. "It's not about defeat or victory," he said, "but about understanding the forces that shape outcomes. You've learned more tonight than you realized, Marlowe. And that knowledge will determine what happens next." Marlowe's lips tightened, a flicker of defiance still present, but it was tempered now by exhaustion and recognition. The fight had been as much about education in control and consequence as it had been about physical confrontation. The woman stepped closer, her presence reinforcing the boundaries, subtle yet unmistakable. Her gaze met Marlowe's briefly, and though she said nothing, the message was clear: any attempt to regain dominance would be met with immediate and decisive counteraction. The psychological weight of that silent assertion pressed heavily on Marlowe, further diminishing his capacity for rebellion. Every fiber of his being understood the reality he faced. He was trapped, contained, outmatched in both body and mind. Marlowe slumped fully against the wall, exhaustion overtaking even the embers of defiance that lingered. His breaths came in ragged bursts, chest heaving, muscles trembling from exertion and pain. The street around them, scarred from their struggle, seemed to settle, yet the tension lingered, a subtle reminder that the night held more than just physical confrontation. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every shift in the wind carried potential threats, and the presence of two vigilant adversaries ensured that no movement would go unnoticed. Lucien and the woman remained poised, vigilant, silent sentinels in a street that had been transformed by their skill and authority. Marlowe's gaze flicked between them, frustration mixing with a reluctant acknowledgement of reality. His body was exhausted, his mind taxed, and yet he could not completely relinquish the ember of defiance that had carried him through moments of chaos. But the weight of skill, strategy, and precision bore down upon him, a constant reminder of the consequences of miscalculation. For several long moments, the night held a tense equilibrium. The wind stirred, carrying dust and debris across the cracked pavement. Lucien's eyes swept over the scene, cataloguing every detail, every potential residual threat. Marlowe remained kneeling, absorbing the full weight of his defeat, while the woman's gaze remained fixed on him, a silent but potent assertion of control. The air was thick with the residue of tension and exertion, the aftermath of confrontation settling slowly but deliberately over the scene. Marlowe's voice finally broke the silence, trembling slightly yet laced with venom. You may have this street," he muttered, "but it's far from over." Lucien's gaze remained fixed on him, unyielding and precise. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "but for tonight, you have learned where your limits lie. That understanding is far more valuable than pride." The words hung in the night air, heavy with authority, and Marlowe's chest rose and fell in silence, the bitter taste of realization settling in fully. The shadows seemed to grow deeper, bending around the figures, wrapping the street in a suffocating stillness. Lucien and the woman stood together, vigilant and poised, while Marlowe knelt, exhausted and subdued, processing the magnitude of the confrontation. The immediate danger had passed, but the night itself seemed alive with potential, as though the lessons of control, consequence, and dominance were etched into every surface, every shadow, and every lingering breath. The wind carried a chill as it cut through the narrow, debris-strewn street, stirring remnants of the battle like ghosts unwilling to settle. Lucien and the woman remained vigilant, each movement precise, controlled, yet unhurried, as though the night itself had become a battlefield of shadows and whispers. Even with Marlowe contained, the vigilance of seasoned warriors demanded constant awareness. Danger seldom arrived in isolation, and the aftermath of conflict was always a fertile ground for unseen threats. Marlowe slumped further against the cracked wall, his chest heaving, sweat and dried blood streaking across his bruised face. Fatigue weighed heavily on him, but the ember of defiance had not yet extinguished. His eyes flicked from Lucien to the woman, searching for weaknesses that did not exist. The street, littered with broken glass, splintered wood, and scattered debris, bore the scars of the struggle, echoing the intensity of a battle fought not only in the physical realm but in the psychological one. Every mark on the street mirrored the tension that still gripped the night. Lucian's eyes scanned the environment, cataloging every detail with meticulous precision. Each shadow, each uneven surface of the cracked pavement, each displaced fragment of the debris held potential for advantage or threat. He noted the subtle shifts in the flickering streetlights, the rustle of leaves stirred by the restless wind, the faint hum of distant traffic. Each element was integrated into his understanding of the environment, ensuring that control remained unbroken even in the absence of immediate physical confrontation. Beside him, the woman moved with quiet, deliberate purpose. Her presence was simultaneously reassuring and threatening, an embodiment of silent authority. Her gaze never wavered from Marlowe, yet her peripheral vision catalogued every corner of the street, every potential hazard or advantage. She reinforced Lucian's control, ensuring that Marlowe's options remained constrained, that any desperate surge of violence would meet instant counteraction. Together, they created a zone of dominance that was nearly imperceptible yet impossible to breach. Marlowe's voice broke the silence, hoarse but edged with frustration. You think this is the end," he muttered, though the confidence that had driven him earlier had waned. Lucian's response was measured, almost surgical in its delivery. "Endings are irrelevant. Understanding is what matters. Tonight you have learned the price of miscalculation, the limits of brute force, and the consequences of underestimating your opposition. That knowledge is permanent." His words carried weight, the kind that settled deep into one's bones, leaving a lasting impression beyond the immediate pain of defeat. The wind shifted, lifting dust and fragments of debris, the faint metallic scent of blood still lingering in the air. Marlowe clenched his fists, shaking with residual adrenaline and frustration. He knew that he could not regain control through physical force alone. The recognition gnawed at him. Every effort had been anticipated, countered, and nullified. His mental game had been outmatched, his strategic options systematically eliminated. Exhaustion mingled with humiliation as he acknowledged the true depth of his vulnerability. Lucian advanced slowly, each step deliberate, each motion calculated to maintain dominance while avoiding unnecessary risk. Marlowe's eyes followed every movement, heart pounding, calculating, yet aware that any sudden or desperate motion would be futile. Beside Lucian, the woman mirrored his actions, reinforcing boundaries and ensuring that no escape routes remained viable. The two of them formed a synchronized wall of skill, authority, and psychological pressure, leaving Marlowe isolated and exposed in a way that transcended mere physical control. Marlowe's gaze darted to the scattered debris around him, remnants of their battle, the discarded briefcase, shards of glass, broken streetlight pieces. A desperate idea flared, fleeting but intense. Perhaps there was some overlooked advantage he could exploit. With a sudden motion, he lunged toward the briefcase, hoping to seize something tangible, a symbol of leverage. Lucian reacted instantly, intercepting him with precision, guiding him past the briefcase effortlessly. Marlowe stumbled, exhausted, the object remaining out of reach, a stark reminder of his futility and the meticulous control of his adversaries. Frustration and exhaustion marked Marlowe's expression. Sweat mingled with blood, his chest heaving, muscles trembling. He recognized, painfully, that his approach had been predictable, and instinct alone could not counter skill combined with strategy. Lucian and the woman moved with near-perfect synchronization, an almost imperceptible dance of dominance and containment. Every motion conveyed authority, every pause reinforced inevitability. The street itself seemed to reflect their control, the night bending around them, charged with tension. Lucian's voice cut through the silence, calm but commanding. "It is not about victory or defeat," he said quietly, "but understanding and control. Tonight, you have witnessed both, Marlowe. Your options are exhausted, your position is clear." Marlowe's lips tightened, the defiance still present, though it flickered in the face of overwhelming mastery. The confrontation had been as much an education in dominance as it had been a physical contest. Lessons in patience, foresight, and consequence had been delivered with unflinching precision. The woman stepped subtly closer, reinforcing the containment. Her gaze locked on Marlowe's, silent but potent in its message. Any attempt at resurgence would be met with immediate and decisive response. The psychological weight of that presence pressed heavily on him, a constant reminder that his remaining energy and options were meaningless against two adversaries acting with perfect coordination. Every fiber of his being recognized the inevitability of the moment. Marlowe slumped further against the wall, the ember of defiance dimming under the crushing weight of exhaustion and recognition. His breathing was ragged, chest rising and falling unevenly, muscles trembling from exertion and pain. The street, though scarred from their earlier struggle, seemed to settle, yet the tension lingered, a residual imprint of control and authority left upon the environment. Every shadow, every glimmer of light, every whisper of wind reminded him of his vulnerability. Lucien and the woman remained poised, vigilant, silent sentinels in the transformed street. Marlowe's gaze flicked between them, frustration mixing with reluctant acknowledgement of reality. His body was exhausted, his mind taxed, yet the ember of defiance persisted, a fragile spark clinging to life. The weight of skill, strategy, and precision, however, bore down relentlessly. He understood fully that the fight had been as much mental as physical, and the lessons would not fade with the night. The night held a tense equilibrium. Wind stirred, lifting debris across the cracked pavement. Lucien's eyes swept the scene, cataloguing details, residual threats, and the faint potential for unforeseen complications. Marlowe knelt, absorbing the magnitude of his defeat, while the woman's presence reinforced the permanence of control. The air was thick with tension, an almost tangible residue of confrontation that settled slowly but deliberately over the street. Marlowe's voice broke the silence, tremulous yet sharp. "This isn't over," he muttered, the defiance stubborn though weakened. Lucien's gaze remained fixed, unyielding, measured. "Perhaps not," he said, "but tonight, you have learned where your limits lie. Understanding that is far more valuable than pride or aggression." The words hung in the night, heavy with authority and inevitability, marking the boundaries of control and the reality of consequence. Shadows stretched and deepened, bending around the figures, enveloping the street in a suffocating stillness. Lucien and the woman stood together, vigilant and poised, a testament to skill, precision, and authority. Marlowe remained kneeling, subdued and exhausted, confronted with the full weight of the confrontation. The immediate danger had passed, yet the night retained a sense of latent power, an energy that seemed to acknowledge the lessons of control, dominance, and consequence etched into every shadow, every broken shard, and every whispered gust of wind. The night had deepened, the air growing colder, carrying the faint scent of rain from distant clouds that had begun to gather beyond the horizon. Lucien and the woman moved cautiously among the shadows, their footsteps silent against the cracked pavement. Though Marlowe had been subdued, they knew all too well that darkness harbored unpredictable threats. A single misstep, a single overlooked movement, could tip the delicate balance back into chaos. Every creaking sign, every rustle of leaves, seemed to echo their unspoken vigilance, the night itself conspiring to test their focus. Marlowe remained slumped against the wall, chest heaving, sweat and grime streaked across his bruised face. His eyes flicked from Lucien to the woman, searching desperately for any opening, any moment of weakness that could be exploited. The battle had drained him, not just physically but mentally, each attempt to regain control having been anticipated and neutralized with surgical precision. The street bore the scars of the confrontation, broken glass, scattered debris, and the remnants of their struggle, and each jagged edge reflected his growing sense of entrapment. Lucien's gaze swept methodically across the environment, noting every shadow, every uneven patch of pavement, every possible hiding place. He catalogued the subtle variations in light, the gentle sway of debris in the breeze, and even the faint echoes of distant city life. Each observation reinforced his command over the space, ensuring that no movement went unnoticed and no opportunity for resurgence could arise without immediate detection. Beside him, the woman mirrored his vigilance, her presence reinforcing boundaries and consolidating their control over the scene. Marlowe's voice broke the silence, low and strained. "You think this makes you untouchable," he muttered, though the defiance in his tone was waning under exhaustion. Lucien's response was measured, calm, and deliberate. "Control is not about invincibility," he said, "but about anticipation and precision. You have tested your limits tonight and discovered the consequences of underestimating your opposition." The words carried weight, a quiet assertion that mastery was as much about strategy and observation as it was about force. A faint gust of wind swept through the street, lifting dust and fragments of debris, carrying the subtle scent of iron from Marlowe's blood. He clenched his fists, shaking with frustration and residual adrenaline, aware that brute strength alone would not restore his position. Every instinct, every movement, had been countered with meticulous care, leaving him both physically drained and psychologically cornered. The recognition of his vulnerability gnawed at him, and for the first time, fear began to mingle with his lingering defiance. Lucien took a measured step forward, closing the distance with precise, deliberate motions. Marlowe's eyes tracked him, calculating, yet knowing instinctively that any sudden or desperate act would meet an immediate response. Beside Lucien, the woman mirrored his movement, reinforcing containment with quiet authority. Their coordination was seamless, a silent but powerful message that Marlowe was isolated, vulnerable, and fully under control. The street itself seemed to bend to their presence, shadows deepening as if acknowledging the shift in dominance. Marlowe's gaze fell upon the briefcase that had lain abandoned during the earlier confrontation. A flicker of hope sparked in his expression, a last-ditch attempt to reclaim leverage. With a sudden, jerky movement, he lunged toward it. Lucien reacted instantly, intercepting him with minimal effort yet maximum effect, guiding him past the object without so much as a misstep. The briefcase skidded uselessly across the cracked asphalt, remaining out of reach, a silent testament to Marlowe's futility. Exhaustion and frustration were written plainly across Marlowe's features. Sweat mixed with dried blood, chest heaving with each uneven breath. He recognized the futility of his approach, the predictable flaws in his tactics, and the overwhelming coordination of his adversaries. Lucien and the woman moved with near-perfect synchronization, an almost imperceptible dance that asserted control without overt aggression. Every motion carried authority, every pause reinforced inevitability, and every shadow seemed to whisper the same lesson: resistance was not an option. Lucien's voice sliced through the tension, calm but unyielding. "It is not about victory or defeat," he said softly, "but about understanding and control. Tonight, you have seen both, Marlowe. Your options are gone, your position undeniable." The words were precise, carrying the weight of authority and inevitability. Marlowe's lips tightened in silent acknowledgement, the ember of defiance flickering weakly in the face of overwhelming mastery. The confrontation had transcended mere physical combat. It was a lesson in patience, foresight, and consequence, delivered without compromise. The woman stepped slightly closer, her presence reinforcing the containment. Her eyes, dark and unwavering, conveyed the unspoken reality: any attempt at resurgence would be met with immediate, decisive action. Marlowe's body, already trembling with exertion, absorbed the psychological weight of this silent assertion. Every instinct that had carried him through moments of chaos was now crushed under the pressure of their coordinated vigilance. He was cornered, exhausted, and fully aware that the night had claimed control. Marlowe slumped further against the wall, the embers of defiance fading beneath the crushing weight of recognition and fatigue. His chest rose and fell unevenly, muscles trembling from exertion and pain. The street, scarred and battered, seemed to settle around him, yet the tension lingered, a residual echo of authority and control left imprinted in every shadow and every shard of glass. The night had changed, leaving an indelible mark on both the street and its occupants. Lucien and the woman remained vigilant, silent sentinels of skill and precision. Marlowe's gaze shifted between them, frustration and reluctant acknowledgement of reality reflected in his eyes. His body was exhausted, mind strained, yet the faint ember of defiance persisted, a fragile spark clinging stubbornly to life. The weight of strategy, skill, and coordination bore down on him, a relentless reminder that his miscalculations had been fully exposed and exploited. The night held a tense, almost reverent stillness. The wind lifted dust and debris across the cracked pavement, while Lucien's eyes swept the street, cataloguing every detail, every potential residual threat, and every subtle movement. Marlowe remained kneeling, absorbing the full weight of his defeat, while the woman's presence reinforced the permanence of control. The air was thick with tension, the aftermath of confrontation lingering like a palpable entity, settling slowly over the street. Marlowe's voice broke the silence once again, trembling but resolute. "This isn't over," he muttered, the defiance stubborn despite his fatigue. Lucien's gaze remained fixed, unyielding, precise. "Perhaps not," he said quietly, "but tonight, you have learned the limits of your own power. Understanding those limits is far more valuable than pride or aggression." The words hung in the cold night air, heavy with authority, marking the boundaries of control and the reality of consequence. Shadows stretched and deepened around the trio, the street enshrouded in a suffocating stillness. Lucien and the woman stood side by side, vigilant and poised, a testament to skill, precision, and authority. Marlowe knelt, subdued and exhausted, confronted with the magnitude of the confrontation. The immediate danger had passed, yet the night retained a latent energy, a pulse of awareness that seemed to acknowledge the lessons etched into every shadow, every broken fragment, and every gust of wind that whispered through the street. A distant rumble of thunder hinted at the coming storm, a subtle reminder that the night had yet more to reveal. Lucien's eyes flicked toward the horizon, ever aware, as the woman mirrored his vigilance. Marlowe remained kneeling, chest rising and falling, his body and mind finally yielding to the weight of mastery imposed by his opponents. The street, scarred but reclaimed, stood as silent witness to the precision and authority that had determined the outcome of this night. The storm had finally arrived, though only in distant murmurs for now, a low rumble over the horizon that hinted at rain yet to come. The night was colder, and the occasional gust of wind carried both the scent of wet asphalt and the faint tang of Marlowe's blood. Lucien and the woman moved cautiously, their steps deliberate and silent, scanning the fractured street as though it might conceal another threat. Even though Marlowe was exhausted and subdued, experience had taught them that the night was unpredictable, and complacency often invited catastrophe. Marlowe remained slumped against the wall, drenched in sweat and grime, his bruised face illuminated intermittently by the flickering streetlights. The defiance in his eyes had not vanished entirely, but it flickered weakly, struggling against the physical and psychological exhaustion imposed by the relentless containment. Each attempt at resistance, each surge of adrenaline, had been anticipated and neutralized with precision, leaving him aware now more than ever of his vulnerability. Lucien's gaze swept methodically across the environment, noting the smallest variations in shadows, the subtle undulations of debris stirred by the restless wind, and even the distant sounds of life that punctuated the stillness of the night. Each observation was catalogued, processed, and integrated into his understanding of the battlefield. The precision of his awareness left no room for error. Any lapse could undo the careful containment they had established. Beside him, the woman mirrored this vigilance, her movements silent yet authoritative, reinforcing the perimeter and ensuring that Marlowe's options remained fully constrained. Marlowe's voice broke the silence, hoarse yet persistent. "You may have this night," he muttered, "but it won't always be like this." Lucien's reply was calm, measured, and unyielding. "Control is not about permanence, Marlowe. It's about understanding, anticipation, and precision. Tonight, you have witnessed both. That knowledge is more valuable than any fleeting advantage you might imagine for the future." His words carried a weight that sank deep, a quiet but undeniable reminder of the consequences of miscalculation. The wind intensified slightly, lifting dust, debris, and the faint metallic scent of blood from the street. Marlowe's hands shook as he attempted to regain some semblance of composure, aware that sheer physical force could not change the reality of the situation. Each instinct that had once guided him with confidence was now an echo of futility, every calculated move rendered ineffective by the seamless coordination and unyielding precision of his opponents. The realization gnawed at him, a bitter acknowledgement that his autonomy had been curtailed entirely, leaving him exposed and vulnerable in every way. Lucien stepped forward with deliberate precision, closing the distance in a manner that was both unobtrusive and unmistakably dominant. Marlowe's eyes tracked him, recognizing instantly that any sudden or desperate motion would meet immediate and effective counteraction. Beside Lucien, the woman mirrored his movement, reinforcing the zone of containment with subtle authority. Together, they created a dynamic field of dominance that was invisible in its fluidity yet impossible to breach. The shadows of the street seemed to deepen in response, bending around them as if acknowledging the shift in control. Marlowe's gaze returned to the briefcase, still lying discarded from the earlier struggle. Desperation flared once more, a fleeting ember of hope that perhaps some advantage could still be seized. With a sudden, jagged motion, he lunged toward it. Lucien reacted instantly, intercepting him with effortless precision, guiding him past the briefcase without breaking stride. The object skidded across the pavement, useless and inaccessible, a stark symbol of Marlowe's impotence and the unassailable coordination of his adversaries. Exhaustion and frustration were etched across Marlowe's features, each line of his body betraying the physical and psychological toll of the confrontation. Sweat and dried blood streaked his face, his chest rose and fell in uneven bursts, and his trembling muscles carried the weight of both fatigue and despair. The realization was undeniable. His previous approach had been predictable, his instincts insufficient, and the coordination of Lucien and the woman left him isolated and incapable of effective action. Every subtle movement, every calculated gesture of his opponents had reinforced the inevitability of his defeat. Lucien's voice pierced the night once more, calm and deliberate. "It is not merely about winning or losing," he said, "but about understanding control and consequence. You have now experienced both, Marlowe. Your options have been exhausted, and the reality of your position is undeniable." Marlowe's lips tightened in reluctant acknowledgement, the ember of defiance reduced to a flicker under the relentless weight of mastery. The confrontation had transcended physical combat. It was a study in strategy, patience, foresight, and the psychological shaping of outcomes. The woman stepped subtly closer, reinforcing the perimeter. Her eyes locked on Marlowe's, conveying without words the certainty of immediate counteraction should he attempt to defy them. The psychological pressure mounted, pressing on his body and mind alike. Every instinct, every ounce of courage that had sustained him during the chaos was now crushed under the precision and coordination of two adversaries acting in near-perfect harmony. He was cornered, exposed, and fully aware that the night had claimed dominion over him. Marlowe slumped further against the wall, the remnants of defiance fading beneath the weight of exhaustion and realization. His breathing was ragged, chest rising and falling unevenly, muscles trembling. The street, scarred by their struggle, seemed to settle around him, yet the tension lingered, a residual echo of authority and dominance that had been etched into every shadow, every broken shard of glass, and every gust of wind. The environment itself bore witness to the lesson he had been forced to learn. Control was absolute when wielded with precision. Lucien and the woman maintained their vigilance, standing as silent sentinels of skill and mastery. Marlowe's gaze flicked between them, a mixture of frustration, reluctant acknowledgement, and lingering defiance in his eyes. His body was fatigued, his mind strained, yet the ember of resistance clung stubbornly. The combined weight of strategy, skill, and coordination pressed down relentlessly, a reminder of the consequences of every miscalculation, every lapse in foresight. The night held a tense equilibrium. The wind carried fragments of dust and debris across the fractured pavement. Lucien's eyes swept over the scene, noting every detail, residual threat, and subtle movement. Marlowe knelt, absorbing the weight of his defeat, while the woman's presence reinforced the permanence of control. The tension in the air was almost tangible, a lingering residue of confrontation that settled slowly and deliberately over the street. Finally, Marlowe's voice broke the silence, trembling but persistent. This isn't over," he muttered, the defiance stubborn despite his fatigue. Lucien's gaze remained unwavering, precise and unyielding. "Perhaps not," he said quietly, "but tonight, you have learned the limits of your power. Recognition of those limits is far more valuable than any fleeting pride or imagined advantage." His words hung in the air, heavy with authority and inevitability, reinforcing the boundaries of dominance and the reality of consequence. Shadows deepened around them, folding the street into a suffocating stillness. Lucien and the woman stood together, vigilant and poised, a testament to mastery, coordination, and authority. Marlowe remained kneeling, subdued and exhausted, confronted fully with the magnitude of the confrontation. The immediate threat had passed, yet the night retained a latent energy, a pulse of awareness that acknowledged the lessons etched into every shadow, every shard of glass, and every gust of wind that whispered through the broken street. Above them, the storm finally drew near, the first drops of rain beginning to fall, splattering against pavement and debris alike. Lucian's eyes flicked toward the approaching storm, ever aware, as the woman mirrored his vigilance. Marlowe remained kneeling, chest heaving, his body and mind yielding fully to the weight of mastery imposed by his opponents. The street, though scarred, had been reclaimed, and the night stood as silent witness to the precision and authority that had dictated the outcome of this relentless showdown. Rain began to fall more steadily, a rhythmic drumming against the cracked asphalt that mirrored the tension still lingering in the night. The street, once scarred by struggle, now glistened under the reflections of flickering streetlights, the broken fragments of debris catching the light like shattered diamonds. Lucian and the woman remained vigilant, their movements deliberate, silent, and precise, even as the storm threatened to wash away the traces of their battle. For them, control was not just about the immediate fight, it was about understanding the environment, the opponent, and the subtle interplay between chaos and order. Marlowe remained slumped against the wall, drenched and shivering, his chest rising and falling in uneven bursts. The physical toll of the night's confrontation was evident in every line of his body, yet it was the psychological weight that pressed most heavily. He had been outmaneuvered at every turn, anticipated before he even acted, and every attempt at defiance had been met with measured, unyielding resistance. His mind raced, searching desperately for a solution that no longer existed. The ember of defiance that had fueled him through earlier confrontations now flickered weakly, threatened by exhaustion and the inevitability of defeat. Lucian's gaze swept across the street with clinical precision, cataloguing every detail. Shadows shifted with the flickering lights and the sway of debris, each element integrated into his understanding of the environment. Even the rain, falling in irregular patterns, became a factor to account for, its sound masking subtle movements, its wetness affecting footing and the placement of objects. Beside him, the woman mirrored his vigilance, her presence both stabilizing and reinforcing the perimeter of control. Together, they created a dynamic zone in which Marlowe's options were not merely limited, they were non-existent. The man's voice finally broke through the rhythmic drumming of the rain, hoarse and trembling. "You think this changes nothing," he muttered, eyes darting between the two figures. Lucian's response was calm, deliberate, and unwavering. "It changes everything," he said quietly. "Understanding the consequences of your actions, recognizing the limits of your strength, and acknowledging the control others can exert, these are lessons that endure beyond a single night. Tonight, you have learned them all." The words carried weight, sinking into the spaces between his thoughts, embedding themselves in a consciousness already battered by fatigue and realization. The rain intensified, washing over the broken pavement and mixing with the faint metallic scent of blood. Marlowe's hands trembled as he tried to push himself upright, aware that sheer physical force could no longer shift the balance. Every instinct he had relied upon had been anticipated, every strategy nullified. His mind grasped for any conceivable way to regain dominance, yet the presence of two vigilant opponents, each a master of anticipation and control, made every option impossible. The bitter truth settled in, resistance in its raw form was futile. Lucian moved closer, each step deliberate, a study in measured authority. Marlowe's eyes tracked him, recognizing instantly that any sudden act of defiance would be met with immediate and effective intervention. Beside him, the woman mirrored his motion, reinforcing containment without a word. The two of them created an invisible yet unbreachable barrier, a silent assertion of dominance that left Marlowe exposed and isolated. The street itself seemed to respond, the shadows deepening and shifting as if to underline the inevitability of his position. Marlowe's gaze fell upon the briefcase, still lying discarded from the earlier struggle. Desperation flared once again, an ember of hope that perhaps some advantage could be seized. He lunged for it with jerky urgency, but Lucian intercepted with flawless precision, guiding him past the object without breaking stride. The briefcase skidded across the slick pavement, unattainable, a stark reminder that control was not simply about strength, it was about foresight, anticipation, and psychological mastery. Frustration and exhaustion etched themselves deeper into Marlowe's features. Sweat, blood, and rain streaked his face, his chest rose and fell in ragged bursts, his muscles trembled with the compounded toll of fatigue and failed resistance. The recognition was undeniable, every tactic he had attempted was insufficient, every instinct flawed, every opportunity preemptively neutralized by the seamless coordination of Lucien and the woman. Each subtle gesture, each carefully executed movement, reinforced the inevitability of his defeat. Lucien's voice cut through the night, calm and precise. "It is not simply about winning or losing," he said. "It is about understanding control and consequence. You have experienced both tonight, Marlowe. Your options are exhausted, your reality undeniable." The words hung heavy, compressing Marlowe's remaining defiance into something fragile and fleeting. The confrontation had become an education in dominance, patience, foresight, and the psychological shaping of outcomes, delivered with unflinching precision. The woman stepped closer, reinforcing the psychological perimeter. Her gaze met Marlowe's, conveying without words that any attempt at defiance would be met with immediate, decisive action. The pressure pressed on him from every side, physical, mental, and emotional. Every instinct that had guided him in previous moments of chaos was now ineffective under the relentless precision of two highly skilled adversaries. He was cornered completely, forced to acknowledge the dominance that had been asserted. Marlowe slumped further against the wall, the remnants of defiance fading beneath the crushing weight of exhaustion and recognition. His breathing came in shallow, uneven bursts, muscles trembled with fatigue. The street, scarred by their struggle, seemed to settle around him, yet the tension remained a lingering echo of authority etched into every shadow, every fragment of glass, and every gust of wind. The environment itself bore witness to the lesson he had been forced to internalize. Control was absolute when executed with precision and foresight. Lucien and the woman remained vigilant, silent sentinels of skill and authority. Marlowe's gaze flicked between them, frustration, acknowledgement, and lingering defiance mingling in his eyes. His body was fatigued, mind taxed, yet the ember of resistance clung stubbornly, a fragile spark. The combined weight of strategy, coordination, and mastery pressed down relentlessly, a reminder of the consequences inherent in every miscalculation, every lapse in foresight. The rain grew heavier, the street slick and reflective under the flickering lights. Lucien's eyes scanned the environment, noting residual threats and the faintest shifts in shadows. Marlowe knelt, absorbing the weight of his defeat, while the woman's presence reinforced the permanence of control. The air, thick with the residue of confrontation, seemed to settle slowly, deliberately, over the broken street, marking the boundary between domination and submission. Finally, Marlowe spoke again, his voice weak yet insistent. "This isn't over," he said. Lucien's gaze remained unwavering, precise, and unyielding. "Perhaps not," he said quietly, "but tonight, you have discovered the limits of your power. Recognition of those limits is far more valuable than any fleeting pride or imagined advantage." His words, calm yet authoritative, resonated through the night, reinforcing the dominance asserted over the street and leaving no ambiguity about the outcome of this relentless showdown. The storm unleashed its full force, rain cascading over the scene, washing away the debris of conflict while leaving the lessons of the night intact. Lucien and the woman stood together, vigilant and poised, as silent sentinels of skill, strategy, and authority. Marlowe remained kneeling, subdued and exhausted, confronted fully with the consequences of miscalculation and the unyielding mastery of his opponents. The street, though battered, stood as a silent witness to the precision, coordination, and control that had determined the outcome. In the midst of the storm, the rain falling relentlessly, the night seemed to acknowledge the finality of what had transpired. Lucien's eyes flicked to the horizon, the approaching darkness and rain symbolizing both the end of confrontation and the enduring lessons of dominance and consequence. The woman mirrored his vigilance, each of them fully aware that while the immediate threat had passed, the echoes of the night would persist, etched into both the street and the minds of all involved. The showdown had reached its conclusion, not with a dramatic explosion of violence, but with the quiet, deliberate assertion of control, the meticulous orchestration of dominance, and the inescapable lesson that even the fiercest defiance could be contained when met with strategy, foresight, and unyielding skill. Marlowe remained kneeling, the rain washing over him, the weight of defeat sinking deep, leaving behind a recognition of limits and the indelible mark of a night he would never forget.